Alright, Chapter 5, TM5685, Navy FAC MO912, Chapter 5, Switchgear, Switchgear definition. Switchgear is generally the term for covering, switching, and interrupting device for the control of the meter, protect the flow of electrical power. Component parts include circuit breakers, instrumental transformer, switches, voltage regulators, instruments, protective relay devices. Switchgears include associated interconnections supporting enclosure structures. The various configurations range in size from a single panel to assembly of panels in enclosure. See Figure 5.1. See Figure 5.2 containing the diagram. Typical switchgear control circuit. Switchgear subdivides large blocks of electrical power. Performs the following missions. Alright, distributes the income power between the technical and non-technical loads, isolates various loads, controls auxiliary power source that provides the means to determine the quality of the status of electrical power, predicts generation distribution system. 5.2 type of switchgear. Voltage classification. Low voltage, medium voltage switchgear equipment are used in auxiliary power generator switch systems. Switchgears are military installation used for the ground metal enclosures. See Figure 5.1 per Institute of Electrical Electronic Engineers. Equipment rated up to 1,000 volts AC, with is classified as low voltage. Equipment equal to greater than 1,000 volts but less than 100,000 volts AC is classified as medium voltage. Your low voltage major elements of the low voltage switchgear for circuit breakers, potential transformer, current transformer, circuit control circuits. For the paragraph 5.3 rated elements of the switchgear include surface entrance conductors, main box, switches, indicator lights, instruments, surface entrance conductors, main bus size as required, and typical heavy duty with the conductors to carry heavy current loads. Your medium voltage switchgear consists of the major related elements of low voltage switchgear, referred to Figure 5.4. Paragraph 5.4, with the details, construction circuit breakers are employed with the two types of switchgear. The methods that accomplish the breaker tripping are primarily different. The service entrance over the conductors and main bus are typically heavy-duty conductors rated used for 601 AC to 38,000 volts AC as required. 5.3 low voltage elements. Circuit breakers. Either molded, cased, or air circuit breakers are used with a low voltage switchgear. Usually, air circuit breakers have drawn out with the construction feature permits removal of the individual breaker from switchgear enclosure for inspection maintenance without de-energizing the main bus. Air circuit breakers. Air circuit breakers are usually used with a heavy-duty low voltage application. Heavy-duty circuit breakers capable of handling high power loads. Then molded case units have higher current interrupting capacity. Air circuit breaker with the feature actuation of the contact stored energy, which is electrically or manually applied. Accordingly, with the mechanism power to put in a position stored energy can be released and closed in open contacts very quickly. Closed tripping action applied with a manually hand or foot power electrically, where the solenoids provide mechanical force. The mechanical force may be applied magnetically. Air circuit breakers contain power sensor overcurrent tripping device detecting overcurrent load, initiating tripping or opening of the circuit breaker. Manual circuit breakers employ with a spring operative the stored energy mechanism operation relief of the energy resolved with a quick operation mechanism. Open and close contacts. Operating speed is not dependent on the speed or force used for the operative to store energy. Fast and positive action prevents unnecessary arcing between the movable and stationary contact that results in longer contact in the breaker life. Manually stored engine circuit breaker energy circuit breakers have springs which are charged. Refer to glossary. By operation insulated to handle the charging action. Energize the starting spring prior to closing opening circuit breaker. The spring, when fully charged, contains enough stored energy to provide at least one closing, one opening for the circuit breaker. The charged spring provides quick positive operation of the circuit breaker, and part of the stored energy with release during closing may be used to charge the opening springs. And it shows a 5.1 typical arrangement, metal enclosed switchgear. Some of the manual breakers require several up-down strokes of the fully charged. The spring breakers relieve the final downward stroke, and either with the manual units, there is no motion of the contacts until the springs are released. Electric quick break breakers are operated by a hand motor, solenoid, and small unit solenoids used to conserve space, and large size AC/DC motor used to keep control power requirement low as 4 amps at a total of 230 volts. F. When the solenoids are energized with the solenoid shove the close the spring drive of the mechanism part of the central neutral point with a continuous motion, most operated mechanisms automatically travel the closed spring with a predetermined level. When the signal is too close delivered, springs are released and the breaker contacts are closed. The motor solenoid does not aid in the closing stroke. The spring supplies all the closing power with sufficient stored energy to close the contacts short circuit condition energy from the opening of the contact stored during the closing action. A second set of springs opens for the contact breaker. Receive the triple impulse. The signal breaker can be operated manually. Maintenance by detachable handle. Circuit breakers usually have 2 or 3 sets of contacts: main, arcing, intermediate, and arcing intermediate contacts are adjusted to open, and main contacts open and reduce burning and pitting of the main contacts. A typical power sensor for the air circuit of the breaker, precisely control of the breaker, opening time of the response, specified level of the faulty current. Most unit in functions as overcurrent trips devices consist of a solenoid trap solid state with components. The solid state components are parts of the power sensor, provide precise sensitive trip signals. Molded case circuit breakers, low current, low energy power circuit with a usually controlled molded case circuit breaker with the trip element directly release the breaker latch when the current achieve the calibrated current magnitude. Typical time current characteristics curves of the molded case of circuit breakers are shown in Figure 5.3. Thermomagnetic circuit breakers have a thermal bimetallic element with the inverse time current relationship to protect against sustained overloads. This type also has an instantaneous magnetic trip element for the short circuit protection. Magnetic trip only circuit breakers have no thermal elements. This type of the magnetic tripping arrangement and trip instantaneously with no purpose to introduce the time delay at the currents equal to or above the trip setting. These are used only for, and it shows a 450 volt 3 pH 60 CPS generator busing. Short circuit protection, motor branch circuits where motor overload running protection is provided by other elements. No automatic circuit interrupters, no automatic overload short circuit trip elements are used for the manual switching. Isolating other devices are provided with a short circuit overload protection. Potential transformers. Potential transformer, or PT, actually accurately wind a low voltage lock the instrument transformer to have the fixed primary with a secondary step down voltage ratio on the potential transformer is mounted with a high voltage enclosure. Only low voltage lead with a secondary winding are brought out. The metering and control panel with the pressure potential transformer isolated with a high voltage primary with the metering of the control panel. And from personnel, the step down ratio we can produce is about 100 volts AC across the secondary with rated voltage applied with the primary with the permanence of the standard low voltage meters 120 volt AC full scale for all high voltage circuit metering control. Ratings. The potential transformer is rated with the primary voltage along with the turns to step-down ratio secured at 120 volts AC or across secondary. Application of the primary potential transformer to connect with either line-to-line, line-to-neutral with the current with the flow through the winding process with the flux in the core. The core with the like links, primary secondary winding voltage is introduced into the secondary circuit with a figure 5-4 ratio. Primary and secondary voltage is in proportion with the number of the turns primary with the secondary winding proportion produces 120 volt secondary terminals related with the voltage applied with the primary. Alright, your dot convention. The dot convention used with the figure 5-5 of the dot convention makes use of the large dot placed on one end of each of the two coils which are mutually coupled. Current entering the dotted terminal with the one coil produced the open circuit voltage between the terminals on the second coil. Voltage made with the positive voltage reference at the dotted terminal of the second coil. Shows a chart. Typical time current characteristic curve. Current transformer, instrument transforming have a low loss for the purpose of provided with the fixed primary secondary step down current ratio. Primary secondary current ratio is the inverse portion of the primary secondary turns ratio. Secondary winding thus has multiple turns. The current transformer is usually either toroid donut winding of the primary conductor passing through a hole or a secondary bus bar primary around which is wound. Secondary bus bar current transformer is inserted into the bus being measured. Current transformer ratio is selected to result in 5 amp secondary circuit when primary rated current is flowing. See figure 5-4. Potential I amps in AL transformer, current transformer, load line, volt, wattmeter, ammeter, and ratings. The toroid current transformer rated with the side of the primary conductor diameter surrounded with a primary secondary current of 5 amp ratio. Bus bar with the current transformer rated with the side of the bus bar. Primary voltage, primary secondary current around 5 amps ratio. Application primary current transformer is either a line conductor section line bus Secondary current with up to 5 amps directly proportional with line current with the ratio primary to the second current inversely with the proportional to the ratio of the primary turns to secondary turns. Safety, a current transformer step down with a current with also steps the voltage up the voltage across the secondary. As dangerous high level of the primary is energized. Secondary with the current transformer must either be short or connected into the closed metering circuit. Never open a current transformer secondary while primary circuit is energized. Polarities. When connection secondary power potential transformer, current transformer, metering circuit with the correct polarities for the leads and connections must be in accordance with the metering circuit and the device is connected. When wrong polarity connections will give false reading, result in inaccurate data, damage, or injury. All conductors terminations should carry identification that matches schematic diagram plans used in construction maintenance. Control circuit. Switchgear control circuit to provide with the current power starting circuit with the primary move with the closing of the tripping of the switchgear circuit breakers. Additional with the control circuit to provide with the current power to operate. And it shows the primary and secondary 5 current flows instrument transformer polarity mix and shown instantaneously. Alright, various relay with indicating lights associated with the control circuit with the classification either AC or DC. AC current control circuits or AC current control circuits usually derive power source side of the circuit breaker being controlled procedure applied with the main income line breakers generating circuit breakers. Feed circuit breakers, see figure 5.6. Depending on system voltage, the control of the power can be taken directly from the main bus since it has been connected through the control power transformer. Your tie breaker control circuits in system using tie breaker. The control power for the tie breaker with the feed breaker is supplied through the over schemes of control power is available to either side of the breaker is energized. See figure 5.7. In applications requiring synchronizing circuitry, running incoming control buses are usually supplied via the potential transformer. The transformer primary are connected to both the line side, load side of the circuit breakers. They are usually synchronizing the transformer. Shows the main income line, fuse, control power, transformer, control bus, main generators, feedback breaker load, fuse, control power, transformer, generator breaker, fuse, control power, transformer, generator. Alright, this is a AC control circuit breaker. Shows the main incoming line, power transformer, main breaker, generator 212, main income line, fuse, generator, main breaker, 3 main generator breaker, main breaker, feed breaker, control power transformer, load, feed breaker, fuse, feed breaker, load. Our secondary is connected with the proper control bus through the contact synchronizing switch through the contact certain auxiliary relays. They synchronize with the switch. It would be either the manual operates an auxiliary relay when used when automatic synchronizing is provided. Or DC control circuits. DC control circuits derive from their power from a battery source. Specifically, the bank of the battery is battery charge with the maintained of the battery with the proper charge of the battery bank. Can be rated at various levels ranging from 24 volts to 125 volts DC. The circuit of the require the source with control power complete with the independent of the power system are connected to the DC control bus. Example of these primary move with the starting circuit within some cases the trip circuit with the circuit breaker with the device other than direct arcing overcurrent trip devices are used. Also closing the circuit with the circuit breakers sometimes connected with a DC control break bus. Service practice. The service practice low voltage switchgear consider the complete maintenance program built around equipment of the system records visual inspection. Program is described in the manufacturer literature furnished within the components of the problem. The problem develops. Users should perform general troubleshooting procedure with the program, include with appropriate analysis of the record keeping equipment in the system along with important necessary function of the record keeping log sheet must be specially developed to suit the individual application auxiliary use. Troubleshooting. Performing troubleshooting procedure with the annual abnormal operation of the system equipment to serve the maintenance personnel must refer to the record. The interpretation comparison of performance data log sheets comparison of the operation should be made under the equally closely similar conditions of the load, ambient temperature. The general scheme of the troubleshooting is outlined in the following paragraphs in the troubleshooting table. Use recognized with industrial practices with a general guide with the servicing of the manufacturer literature. The user should refer to the manufacturer literature specific information in individual circuit breaker. General service information circuit breakers include following safety requirements did not work on energized breaker did not work on part of the breaker test couplers connect with the breaker to the control circuit during the testing spring charge breaker mechanism shall be serviced only with the personnel experience with the releasing of the spring load with the control manner making operational tests and check on the breakers and the after maintenance before it is returned to the server that do not work on the spring charge circuit breaker when it is charged in position. Switchgear needs exercise if the circuit breaker remains idle, either open or closed for 6 months or more. It should be open and closed several times during the period, and preferably under load. The breaker is operated with the relay and switch should be operated at this time. Alright, services for molded cases. Circuit breakers consist of the following procedure for the inspect with the connection with the sign with the arcing, overheating, replace with the faulty, connect with the tighten all connections, clean with the connection surface, perform overload tripping, vary automatic opening breaker with the verify with the magnetic tripping feature with the operating with performing circuit control, circuit breaker overload tripping, test proper action breaking, tripping components and verified, selecting percentage breaker current rating such as 300% for testing overload is applied separately to each pole of the breaker. Determine how it will affect the automatic opening of the breaker. Refer to the manufacturer's test information. Turn the breaker on several times to verify satisfactory mechanical operation. F. Service of the air circuit breaker consists of the following procedures. Figure 5.8. Install the safety pin to restrain the closed spring forces with, and then shows figure 5.8. Maintenance typical low voltage switchgear air circuit breaker. Connected all power connected primary and control. Tested control power still controlled. Disconnected, all power disconnected, and then withdrawn, breaker withdrawn, and ready for removal. Alright, pin and plate with the contacts closed slowly when the breaker is manually operated with the inspect of the connection with the single of the signs of the arcing, overheating, replay with the faulty current with the tighten all connections, clean with the connection surface. An infrared survey is recommended with the inspection survey. The infrared survey should be performed with the circuit breaker under load with the close with the overheating with the connection. Perform the general troubleshooting of the breaker. Refer to the following table. If the problem developed, the trouble cannot be corrected. Refer to the manufacturer's literature with specific information. Individual breakers, instrument, transformers require no care other than keeping the dry and clean. Refer to manufacturer's literature and specific information is required. Information related to the control circuit components is provided in paragraph 5.3e of this chapter. And then it goes in the 5.1 table of low voltage circuit breaker troubleshooting. And then 5.1 low voltage circuit breaker troubleshooting continued. 5.4 medium voltage element circuit breaker with medium voltage switchgear with the oil air blast vacuum circuit breakers. Usually all the circuit breakers usually the circuit breakers have the drawn on construction permit removal of the individual breaker from the enclosure of the inspection means without the energy of the main bus. All of the C circuit breakers can quickly and interpretively extinguish the electric arc that occurs between the breaker contacts when the contacts are separated. Oil circuit breakers, when the contacts are separated with the oil with the interpreted with the voltage with the current greater than compared with the contact separation in air to the room temperature. Arc interruption is better within oil than air because the dielectrical strength of the oil is much greater than air. Also, the arc generates hydrogen gas from the oil. The gas is superior to air as a cooling medium, usually with the contacts arc over the enclosed with the fiber arcing chamber. The exhaust ports on one side increase the capacity. Air circuit breakers, air extinction of the high pressure air blast and another method of quickly interpreting and extinguishing electrical arc controls blast type. Cross blast type breakers are usually used with the medium voltage switchgear. Cross blast breaker used with the arc chute, one splinter insulating fan with the functions as an arc breaker. See figure 5.10. The arc is drawn with the upper and lower electrodes during the interpretation of the blast. High pressure is directed across the arc, pushing the arc against the splitter, and the arc is broken and the current zero carried downstream. Vacuum circuit breakers. Vacuums are interruption with the nearest, quickest method of extinguishing an electrical arc. With the type of the breaker is oilless, fireproof, nearly maintenance-free. Surface life with its very long interpretation, very rapid. Usually first current zero, high electrical strength of a small vacuum gap. The contribution, rapid interruption of the arc. Short contact travel the permit with the mechanism as two-part with the contacts must transfer from the oil breaker. Warning, mechanical indication of the open may not be true. Always make sure that no voltage exists on the load line side before performing any work. Your potential transformer actually accurately wound low voltage loss instrumental transformer having the fixed primary to second step down voltage as the power transformer mounted with a high voltage enclosure only with low voltage leads from secondary winding are. And this shows the fiber walls forming arc chamber arc, stationary contact exhaust ports, blast of hydrogen gas, fiber arc splitters, moving air arc interruption, oil drawn diagram. Orifice place high pressure air blast arc upstream arc electrode, orifice plate low air pressure downstream air arcing electrode. Brought out with a metering control pan with a potential transformer I with a high voltage primary with a metering with a control pan with a form from personnel with a step down ratio between produced at 120 volt AC across with a secondary rated voltage applied. Primary with a permanent tube with a standing low voltage meter with 120 volt AC full scale all high voltage circuit metering control. Rating potential transformers are usually rated 120 volt secondary circuit. Application refer to figure 53B2 with the applications of the information. Current transformer, instrument transformer, heavy low loss for the purpose of the provide fixed primary, secondary step down current ratio, primary secondary current ratio, inverse proportion, primary secondary turns ratio, secondary winding, thus multiple turns. Current transformer usually either a toroid donut winding with the primary with the conductor passing through the whole of the unit. Section of the bus bar primarily around the wound with a secondary insert with the bus run. Current transformer ratio select with the result of 5 amperes secondary current with the primary rated current that's flowing. Rating current transformers are usually rated at 5 amperes secondary circuit. The application for the figure 53C2 application information. Control circuits, which control circuits for the medium voltage functional similar to those the low voltage system control circuits, similarly classified as either AC or DC. AC control circuit refer to the description provided in paragraph 53E1. DC controls refer to the description provided in 53E3. Service practices for medium voltage switchgear consists of the complete maintenance, and it shows a picture of a cross-sectional vacuum interrupter. Maintenance program that is built around the equipment and system with a visual inspection program to discover the manufacturer literature of the furniture of the component. If the problem develops, the user shall perform general troubleshooting. Procedure of the program include the appropriate analysis of the records. Keep the equipment and system along with the important necessary function of the record. Keep the log sheet may be specifically developed to individual applications. Auxillary troubleshooting. Perform troubleshooting, perceive the abnormal operation of the system and equipment, observe the maintenance performance must be referred to the record interpretation of the comparison of the performance data and log sheets comparison of the operation should be made with the only under equal, close, similar conditions low with the aim and attempts of the general scheme for the troubleshooting is outlined with the following paragraphs. Use recognized industrial practice with general guidelines surfacing with the refer to the manufacturer literature. The user should refer to the manufacturer literature, specific information, individual circuit breaker, general service information with the circuit breaker with include the following safety requirement to do not work on an energized breaker. Now work on any part of the breaker the test couplers are engaged. The test coupler connect with the breaker to the control circuit during the test. Maintenance closing the device with the switchgear not suitable for the closing of the live system. Speeding is closed with the important with the speeding is opening with a wrench for the other maintenance with the tool if not fastening enough. Before working on the switchgear enclosure, remove all the draw out devices such as circuit breaker, instrument, transformer. Do not do tools done on the equipment while working on it. It is too easy to forget the tool when closing an enclosure. Switch gears need exercise, but the circuit breaker remains idle, then either open or closed for 6 months or more. It should be open or closed and closed several times during the period, preferably under load. If the breaker is operated by a relay or a switchgear that is used to be operated within time, service circuit breakers insulating with the load will require the special handling. Evaluate the breaker with the inspection rack, untangle with exposed with the contacts. Insulating liquid usually within the circuit breaker with mineral oil. The equipment using liquid containing polychlorinated bioethanols may still be in use. Polychlorinated bioethanols are carcinogenic and non-biodegradable. Some of the restrictions used with the polysilicone insulating liquid may be used as a substitute with the polychlorinated bioethanols authorized by the base engineer of the special handling of the required with the polychlorinated bioethanols are used in equipment. Refer to Title 40 CFR 761 for polychlorinated bioethanol details. Polychlorinated detail a powerful solvent. Handling disposal information special gloves required. Check the condition line with adjustment of the contact. Verify the contacts for the bare firm even pressure. Use the fine file to distress of the rough contacts. Replace pitted or burned contacts. Wipe clean all ports normally with immersion and remove the trace of the carbon remain after liquid drain. Inspect insulating parts of the cracks and other damage requiring replacement. Take the dielectrical strength of the liquid using 1/10 of an inch gap of 1.1, 1 1/10 of an inch gap diameter terminal with the strength of less than 22 kilovolts. Remove filter replace with a new liquid having dielectrical strength at least 6 kilovolt. Filter liquid when inspection show the excess of the carbon event. Even the dielectrical strength satisfactory becomes carbon will deposit insulating surface decrease for the insulating strength of the liquid. Samples should be taken with a large mouth glass bottle that has been cleaned and dried with a benzene Use a car stopper with its bottom with the bottle. Draw the test sample to the bottom of the tank after the liquid has been settled. The sample should be from the tank proper, not from the valve of the drain pipe. Periodically remove the liquid from the tank. Wipe inside of the tank with the tank lines buried with the remove of the carbon. Inspect with the breakers, operating mechanism, the loose hardware, missing, broken, cotter pins, retaining rings, etc. Check with the adjustment, readjustment of the necessary. Refer to the manufacturer instruction book. Clean operating mechanism, lubricate air, magnetic type breakers. Refer to the manufacturer instruction book. Before replacing the tank, operate with the breaker slow with the maintenance closing the device. Verify with no friction or binding, preventing slowing down in its operation. Check with the electrical operation. Avoid operation of the breaker any more than necessary with the testing without liquid in the tank. The design to operate with liquid mechanical damage can result with excessive operation without. When replacing the tank filled with the correct level of liquid, be sure that the gaskets are undamaged. Tank nuts, flanging nuts on gauges, valve, and tighten properly to prevent liquid leakage. Our surface air blaster type circuit breaker with a circuit breaker should be service tested and exercised and calibrated at rules not to exceed 2 years. For the Army Regulation 42043, with withdrawal of the breaker and housing maintenance, circuit breakers are designed to perform up to 5,000, 30,000 operations for 1200 amps to 200 amp breakers, respectively, without major overhaul. Most frequent servicing may be necessary for the operating conditions. Severe inspection servicing with a performed on every fault with a clearing operation further with the instruction provided with the manufacturer. Wipe insulating parts including bushings inside of the box. Spray clean off smoke with dust. Repair minor damage bush insulation. Sanding, smoothing, refinishing, clear, insulating, varnish. Inspect alignment of the condition, movable stationary contacts. Check with the adjustment of the described manufacturer instruction book. Check alignment of the closure of the breaker P for the tissue with the carbon paper between the contacts. Examine the impression. Do not file with the button type of the contacts. Contact with the habit and roughen and surfaces may carry out the current, as well as smooth the contacts. Remove the large projects of the bubbles cause unusual arcing by unfiling with the filing is touch up. Keep with the contacts with the original design. That is, if the contact is line type, keep the area with the contact linear, and if the ball and point type, keep the ball and point shaped out. With the check with the arc shoot for the damage, replay with the damaged part. Arc shoots are remove the blowout, dust, loose particles, clean silver plated breaker, primary disconnected device with alcohol, silver polish, refer to manufacturer's instruction. Lubricated device applying with thin film with approved grease for the inspect with the breaker with the operating mechanism, the loose hardware missing. Broken cotter pins, restraining rings, etc. Examine the cam, latch, roller, surface damage, excessive wear. Clean, re-lubricating operating mechanisms. Refer to manufacturer instruction book. Lubricating pins, bearings, not disassembled. Lubricating can lubricate the ground and polish the surface of the cam and the rollers, latches, props, and of pins, bearings that are removed from cleaning. Check breaker operation mechanism. Adjust, readjust, as described in the manufacturer instruction book. If adjustments cannot be made with a specified tolerance, except for the wear need for the completed overhaul is indicated. Check for the control of the device. Freedom of operation. Play with the contacts badly worn, burn. Inspect breaker control wiring tightness connections. After the breaker has served with the operating slow with the closing device. Check for the absence of the binding of the friction. Check for the contacts move with the fully operated, fully closed position. Check electrical operation. Use either the test, calibrating the test couplers. Service vacuum circuit breaker with the breaker has primary contacts included with the vacuum container flask, direct inspection replacement. Permit is not available for the operating mechanism similar to either medium voltage circuit with the breaker with the general outline of the same form maintenance work with the enclosure similar to figure 511 show the breaker primary electrical contacts above the stationary contacts solidly mounted moving contacts is mounted on the enclosure of the bellow seal with the contact erosion is measured with the chain of the external shaft position after period of use. So the manufacturer instruction book high voltage applied during the testing may produce the X-ray emissions. Personnel performing the high pot test must stay behind the protective shielding during testing condition of the vacuum is checked. High pot test is applied with the maintenance period. To consult with the manufacturer instruction book for the test procedure. The contact with the vacuum circuit with the breaker cannot be cleaned, repaired, adjusted. The vacuum bottle is usually replaced if the test indicates fault. Alright, transfer circuits. Transfer switches. During actual threat with the power field with the transfer circuits, actuated transfer circuit, electrical loads with a normal source of the power, auxiliary, emergency power source. Normal power is restored with the transfer switches. Even the automatically with the transfer load circuit with the normally supplied must be transferred manually. Voltage and frequency sensing relay with the provide with the monitoring each phase of the normal supply with the relay's load transfer with the which is chain with the voltage frequency with the phase outside with the predetermined limited addition with the relay in that Initiate transfer of the relay with the normal surface, assuming the voltage is restored all fade with beyond with the predetermined pickup value of the relay transfer switch obtained with the operating current within the source to which the load is being transferred. Type of the transfer switches. Two types of transfer switches. Electrically operated, manually operated. Electrically operated transfer switches also come with the optional bypass function. Electrically operated shall be obtained when the operating the current from the source of which the load is being transferred with a separate vacuum supply. A voltage supply used the sum of the system's electrically operated switch consists of the three function elements: main contacts to connect, disconnecting to the load to and from the source of power, sensing circuit with the constant monitoring condition of the power source to provide with the information necessary for the switch, relay with the circuit operation, transfer mechanism makes transfer of the source to source. Circuit breaker type, circuit breaker transfer switch is a mechanically held device, usually with the two circuit breaker with the the breaker with the handle for the operator. The transfer mechanism to provide a double throw, switching action connecting one circuit terminal to the other two others to transfer the mechanism operated electrically with an unidirectional gear motor and integral speed reducing gearbox, or by dual motor operators. All personal parts are positive contact at all times. Switch can also be operated manually and have provision disengaging generator necessary. Neutral position. Some transfer switches in neutral position have the switch with the mechanically electrically interconnected. Neutral position is not possible during electrical operation. Also, load currents cannot be connected by switch. Normal emergency source simultaneously, whether the switch is operated electrically or manually. Contactor type of the transfer switch mechanically electrically held with a contactor command load bus. Switch is mechanically electrically interlocked to show the neutral position is not possible under the normal electrical operation. Additional load circuits cannot be connected with normal emergency service simultaneously. Your bypass function, electrically operated transfer switch bypass function. Bypass function manually transfers the power around with the automatic transfer switch. This electrically operated switch can be tested to remove the repaired bypass function and may or may not be monetary interpretation of the load depending upon the manufacturer. Bypass purely manual function, therefore, source of the bypass connected failed with the bypass. The manual transferred alternating source. Bypass transfer switch is usually only used for the most critical application where the load is operational continuously. Alright, manually operated manual transfer switches mechanically held devices. Two circuit breakers are operated by hand. All parts of the in positive contact at all times. Switch of the mechanically interconnected, interlocked as if possible, load with the circuit is connected with a normal emergency source. Simultaneously, manual operated transfer switch is available with a single dual operating handles, common operating mechanism across with the two breakers mechanically connecting operators for the brake. Operations of the transfer switches have two operated modes: automatic and non-automatic. Your automatic transfer switches have voltage sensing relays on each phase. The sensing relay is connected with a normal power bus span with a protecting device with the transfer switch connected with a normal power source with the unit with a normal condition. Sensing relay to detect with the sustained drop of the voltage. Normal power source with the relay that automatically start with the auxiliary generator with the transfer switch operates on the sustained drop of the voltage aim phase with the normal source approximately up to 30% drop of delay about 2 seconds into the start of the auxiliary generator. When the voltage frequency of the auxiliary generator are rated value with the normal power source with the still below the normal, automatic control will transfer the load with the emergency source. Upon return of the normal power within 10% of the rated voltage, all phase at a present time of the delay, the switch automatically transfer load to normal source. For the auxiliary generator will run unload with about 5 minutes after the transfer before it shuts down with the control automatic release of the next emergency start. Due to the control of the power transformer switch with the test switch of the pyramid simulation, failure to non-power source test for the transfer switch operation. Your power transfer indicators provided with automatic transfer switch indicate with the current, usually power source with the usually amber light with the marked emergency power show for the system with emergency powers when illuminated. A white light marked normal power show for the system receiving the power with a normal source with illuminated, not automatic. And the non-automatic an operator with the need with is manually transferred to the emergency power source the operator can usually make with the transfer without opening an enclosure. The transfer is usually based on instrument indication and is made by placing transfer switch in required emergency normal position. Power transfer indicator provided by the operator amber light, emergency light show the switch of the emergency power with illuminated white light with normal power show the system with the receiver the power with the normal source when illuminated. The operator usually provides the override with a switch with a bypass automatic transfer control feature permits indefinite connection emergency power source regardless of the condition of the normal power source. Service practice transfer switch is complete with the maintenance of the program built around records. Visual inspection program includes appropriate analysis of the record keeping equipment system log sheet with important and necessary function. Record keeping log sheet specifically developed to auxiliary use. Troubleshooting. Use recognized industrial practice with general guide transfer switch system, trouble the system. The circuits are not performing according to specification required performance level that should be accomplished as follows. Engineering data drawing pertaining to a particular plant. The user refers to the manufacturer literature specified in the individual transfer switch. Alright, performing general troubleshooting the transfer switch program developed refer to the manufacturer literature specifically information. Usually all control elements renewable the front of the switch without removing the switch of the enclosure without removing the main power cables. 5.6 regulators. Voltage regulator maintains the terminal voltage at the alternator generator with a predetermined value. Voltage is controlled by the regulating switch of the electromagnetic field produced by the electro alternator exciter. Voltage regulator automatically overcomes the voltage drop of the alternator, changing the field excitation automatically and varies with load. Type of the regulators, you have the type of the voltage regulators, electromagnetic, static voltage, static exciter, electromagnetic voltage regulators. These regulators usually have a servo control system with three principal elements. For the voltage sensing with the voltage regulating relay with the device monitor with the output voltage sending with the signal to the control circuit. Second with the amplifying section or without time delay with the amplified voltage signal. Third monitor drive with the response signal moving the tap chain with the inducing volt regulator direction with the current voltage. Alright, static voltage regulators. Static voltage regulator, you have the static voltage sensor instead of the voltage regulating relay. Operating voltage sensor for the output is applied with a solid state with a magnetic amplifier, discriminating circuit with the signal, but thereby provide with the changing of the alternator output with the output to raise and lower voltage required the voltage zones between the initiating, raising, and lower control action is called the voltage band. The band must be more than a minimum correction of the obtained through the regulation of the regulator hunting occurring. Accessories include either thermal delay relay with resistant capacity of the network provided time delay with leading of the trending correction of the time delay return of the signal until the accumulated time outside of the voltage limit accumulating time inside the voltage exceed the time of the delay setting. Are the static exciter regulators. Static exciter of the regulator supplied with the alternator with the field with the DC voltage obtained with the three-phase full wave bridge rectifier operation. A small part of the alternator output goes for the regulator with the meter with the rectified DC voltage back with the exciter field winding. The rectifier with the DC voltage produce a 60 cycle ripple. Ripple gives the field winding to the electrical discharge with the winding with the shaft can occur with the filter can be used to reduce the ripple. Discharge is caused by the copper and field winding with the metal shaft that acts like a plate and a capacitator. The action may be resolved with the shaft with a permitted bending of the eventual bearing failure. Static exciter the manually sub-assembly assemble the wired out with the manufacturer plant, usually using one or more silicone rectifiers converted with the AC voltage to DC sub-assembly. You would include regulator filler. Refer to manufacturer literature for the test and adjusting detail. Alright, accessories include either thermal delay of the resistant capacity of the network, time delay with load trend with correction. Refer to paragraph 56A, 2B, 2. Suppressor circuit with a ripple filter, usually provided with a bypass ripple ground before it gets to the generator field. Service practice with the voltage regulators consider the complete menu for the program and the built under around the record visual inspection program includes appropriate analysis of the record keeping equipment system log sheet with the important necessary function of the record keeping log sheets must specifically develop the suit auxiliary use. Troubleshooting the used recognized industrial practice with general guides, typically referring to manufacturer literature, specific information, individual voltage regulator troubleshooting procedure include the following: check voltage complying with manufacturer's specification, check loose and enclosure, insecure electrical connections, check correcting settings over the refer to manufacturer literature, check the unregulated voltage, refer to manufacturer literature. Check the enclosure should be the weather tight. Check the motor in proper operation, loose connection. Check if lubricating is required. Refer to manufacturer's literature details. Voltage regulators associated with the equipment that are normally mounted with the switchgear equipment that interlock with a different component of the proper operation. Troubleshooting the voltage regulator equipment can depend on the different component of the perform procedure with the following table. Figure 5.2 shows the equipment troubleshooting, and then it keeps going. R57 instrumentation. Switchgear instrumentation based on the complete system may include all of the combination indicated with the record recording, metering, and instrument. The potential current transformers are usually isolated with the instrument circuits from the power circuit. Usually, the secondary winding potential transformer is rated with 120 volts. Current transformer output 5 amperes. Type of the instrumentation included indicating a record type of the application information related to the instrument, the transformer application covered in paragraph 53B2, 53C2. Voltage values indicated by the voltmeter. Current values are indicated by an ammeter. Power values described in watts and power factor for the figure 4.7 of the E. Additional information. Watts or kilowatts. Units of electric power indicated by a wattmeter. VARs. VARs or kilovars or reactive power with the obtainment of the effective value. Current effective voltage, sine over the angular phase, the difference between the current voltage. Power factor with the ratio of the active power, ambient power of the display with the power factor, with the meter scale is usually graduated percent and power factor. Alright, frequency alternating current with the indicator with the frequency meter with the meter is usually graduated in 50 to 60 hertz. Speed, rotational speed with the primary move with the indicator with the tachometer revolutions per minute generated system will convert. And here and usually with the impulse tachometer include with the inductor eddy current types of the tachometer with the magnetic pickup with the sensing speed, temperature. Several temperature values include cooling, lubricating, oil, exhaust, and usually required with the show of the safe primary mover operation. Each value is monitored and sensed device. Remote indicator thermometer sensing the device by thermocouple combination, sensing bulb with the capillary to the cube. Thermocouple to the pair with electrical conductors, each different than metal with a joint with the adjacent and temperature with it to be measured with the thermal electromagnetic force produced in junction with the conductor. The other end of each of the conductors is conducted into a voltmeter with which measure to indicate thermal electromagnetic force. B. Thermal sensing bubble, the capillary tube. The sensing bubble, the capillary tube contains a specific amount of liquid gas whose pressure vapors with temperature of the variation appears on the thermometer and represents the temperature of the coolant and oil exhaust. Pressure, primary move the indicating symbol of the device. Remote gauge is due to the burning type of the variation of the period of the gauge to represent the lubricating oil. Other pressure valves may be shown on the system instrumentation panel depending on the type of the primary mover. Overall system requirement, the pressure value that includes the starting air, turbo post, scavenging air, exhaust manifold, fuel gas gauges, meters as used and indicating as required. 8. Fuel level. Various methods using fuel level. The measurement fuels and underground storage tank to be measured with immersing calibrated tape to stick into the tank for a day. Tanks, a glass sight gauge, flat flow actuated gauge can be used. Measuring quantity of the liquid fuel. Remote indication used with the pneumatic, electrical, hydraulic leverage devices used. Running time, the amount of time the auxiliary generator system operates required with the system record keeping. Time is usually recorded with the digital measuring device counter located within the system instrumental panel. Usually with the counter using the electronic circuit with the electrical system, using the AC synchronized motor that is generated with the counter to the counter auxiliary motor and counter depends on frequency generated by the output voltage. The electrical system records operating digital measuring device. System measures time by counting number of the cycles produced. The frequency generated by the output voltage counter indicates the proportional frequency versus time. Just seeing how much more we gotta read. Alright, we got a little bit of reading left. Alright, your relays are used with the automatic control of the auxiliary power generator system. Relay respond with electrical other operating parameters cover the abrupt chain with the control circuit with the web of the measured value. Change of the relay consists of the sensing element with the control element with the contacts. Type of the relays used with the switchgear and include with the general purpose protective type. The general purpose relays are part of the regulation verification devices throughout the system. Include primary mover, industrial portion of this electrical system, energize and de-energize under normal, abnormal conditions by relays. Since relays are usually used in subsystems, equipment that circle the breakers overall with the operating plan must be electrically coordinated. Coordination usually accomplished by designing a system with a circuitry with a selectly an initiative the opening and closing of the relay with the relays constantly monitoring the power system. Overload relays used to provide overload protection auxiliary motors. The overload condition occurs within any of the three phases within the heaters or inserted it will cause the relay trip time delay. Relays employed with a time delay purpose usually solid state with some of the pneumatic relays may still be in use. Pneumatic relays utilize bellow type of arrangement that provide the time delay, but they can be adjusted for the time period within less than a second of several minutes. Solid state relays derive with a delay with a combination of several electronic components. They are adjustable between the fractions of a second to several minutes. Voltage sent with the voltage sensitive of the relays you can increase or decrease. Specific voltage provide output signal with a voltage path at the preset level. Protective relays for defective isolate indicate with the abnormal condition operation of the circuit breaker of the protective device initiated by the relays are required. Some of the electrical habits protected against the short circuit overcurrent over 100 voltage phase of the frequency irregularities relay and installed with a protective generator with stator wiring with an internal short overheating that is sensitive to the fault of the generator that do not result in respond to the faults outside of the generator. The relays are rapidly with to prevent damage generator that isolate the generator from the system. Relay actions include de-energizing generator field while protecting the relay with related to provide with the system with the reverse power flow occurs. These relays occur when the succession of the power reversal with the component impulse of the direct to detect loss of synchronization. Protective relays include the following type: overcurrent relays function current flows exceed the normal and desired value. Induction disc relay with time delay with a cup. The type of relays without time delay are known as electromagnetic type of relays. Solid state relays are normally used with the one more recently installed with equipment. Over voltage relay functions of the voltage exceed the normal and desired value. Induction disc relay with time delay with a cup. Type of the relay with the time delay used. Under voltage relays function of the voltage less than the normal desired value. Induction this relay's time delay may be used to balance position between the minimum and maximum value voltage. Reverse power relays function the power flows with the reverse direction of the normal desired. These relays detect loss of synchronization. Under frequency relays, the desired frequency become with less than the normal value of the condition is usually resolved with reduced primary speed, may be caused by primary governor excess electrical load. Where differential relays function of the difference between the two quantities of the same kind with the two current with the 2 volts. Differential relays usually detect the state of the winding electrical failure, respond to current percentage difference. Current voltage transformer used with the different network should be in match sets. Percentage different relays are used to do with the prevent relay operation fault to do with the current transformer ratio error outside of the protected zone. In the application overcurrent with the relay operates instantaneously where the bus shorts. Circuits will not operate when the current transformer secondary open. The contacts of the 2 relays are connected in series. Current balance relay, circuit breaker, the 2 or more circuit breaker current circuits to provide the output differences between any 2 exceeding setting of the relay sensing the difference of the current, 1 or more generator of the current with another generator. The average of all the other generators relay output may be used with the trip bus tie connectors. Split parallel system removed with unbalanced. Ground fault relay, ground fault protection is usually with provided with a ground sensor relay measure for the sum of the currents in the lines of the line loaded in a 3-phase system. And other relays sometimes have with a transformer to neutral to the ground connecting to for backup. Testing relay, periodic testing relays considered preventive maintenance program is built around the records. Visual inspection includes analysis of the records. Frequency of testing depending on the various involved type of the relay, environmental condition, history, experience with the ambient operation, temperature must be recorded. Most relays have a drawn-out construction so that the relay can be separated in enclosure disconnection. Test repair usually not required. 2. Checklist test of the performed determination. Type of the relay schedule for performance of the test should comply with the requirements of the Army Regulation 42043. Proceed as followed. Inspect the relay covered with before testing to remove dust, other foreign material matter to prevent it from entering the relay. Record inspection results. Check relay flag indication. Always check over the glass of fogging. The fogging is excessive and investigate the cause. Check all the connection proper type with the necessary tightening torque value. Check for the armature connection gaps to compare with the previous measure to adjust the gaps necessary for the referred to manufacturer instruction. Check with the contacts burn, eroded condition, burn, if necessary, refer to the manufacturer's instruction. F. Vary with the proper contact operation. Open and close contacts are with the proper tip of the reclosed action. Refer to manufacturer's instruction. Apply the current voltage. Verify the pickup of the within manufacturer tolerance. Reduce the current until the relay drop with a full reset. Verify the no binding during operation. Refer to manufacturer's instructions. Verify related devices such as capacitors are functioning properly. Refer to manufacturer's instruction. Alright, know the differential relays usually sensitive device, polarized sensing circuitry with a repeat relay pickup test, use the secondary test comparison, previous future test with the refer to the manufacturer's instruction. Record keeping equipment system log with a record sheet is important, necessary to function with a record keeping the log sheets must specifically developed to suit auxiliary use. Troubleshooting before perform troubleshooting with the proceed with the abnormal operation system equipment. Observed maintenance personnel was then referred to record for the interpretation comparison and performance data log sheet comparison. Operations should be made under equally closely similar conditions below. The ambient temperature for the general scheme of the troubleshooting is outlined in the following table. Table 5 shows relay troubleshooting. R59 Miscellaneous Devices. Miscellaneous devices include with the control switch, push button, indicating light, battery, surge capacitor, lighting, arrest of the maintenance tool with testing equipment, fuses. Control switch, push button, the switch gear relay with the control contained with the complete control of all function auxiliary generated equipment, control voltage regulation, phase adjustment, current compensation, engine operating parameters, as well as the engine start, stop, the running, speed, battery, changing brightness, the dimming and indicator lights usually provided, indicator lights. When indicating lights with the outward color cap, the U with the show with the brake with the position, green lights indicate with the open, brake with the red lights indicating closed, brake with the white lights are used to energize potential transformers, indicate with the live circuit with some of the stations include amber and orange light with the indicator with the circuits have been tripped automatically, low voltage lamp with the connect with the series with the appropriate resistors are usually the reduced lamp side with the glare red green lights are usually wired so that they are energized through the trip code with the breaker with the opening of the trip code circuit indicated with dark unlit lamp. Some of the indicating light with color caps are used with induced in normal normal condition for other control functions of the for system. Batteries. Storage battery systems frequently a part of the auxiliary power system. Batteries used for the primary move of the cranking with the uninterruptible power source. Power system batteries maintain charge for the application of the floating battery charger. As the battery discharges with the energy of the charger, increase the charge of the battery, increase the flow of the charge of the battery, converts the truth of the battery, reaching the full charge of the very small current flow into the battery. In addition, batteries provide power switchgear with a control power trip circuit for some of the circuits of most applications. Auxiliary power use some of the form of the wet lead acid battery. However, some of the system, the dry nickel aluminum cadmium batteries. Some of the batteries produce the direct current repeatedly with the chemical reaction. Battery must be recharged with the after each for the restore of the power. Wet cell batteries require scheduled maintenance. This includes the visual inspection of all the cells, weekly hydrometer reading, sample cell monthly reading, floatage, voltage, water level, the hydrometer temperature of each of the cell. Cell connections must be kept clean tight with the prevent heating of the tube. The high resistant voltage drop. Top cells must be kept free of dirt conductive material. The charging of the area must be exhausted positively to prevent hydrogen buildup explosion. Surge capacitors. Surge capacitor, absorbing capacitors, sometimes used without lightning of the arresters, modify shape of the surge voltage wave. The capacitors operated voltage 240 volt, 480, and 600 volts higher. Single thing, three-phase operation capacitor banks formed in individual units connected with a parallel, sometimes used with a fuse with the circuit breaker with the time current with characteristics are used to prevent rupture of the capacitor. Under the circuit conditions, safety precautions must be observed with a working capacitor. Surge capacitor for the polychlorinated biethanols may be still in use for further title 40 CFR 761. Polychloride biethanols are carcinogenic and are not biodegradable. Some of the restrictions to their use are applied. Special handling equipment required for polychlorinated biethanols are usually in equipment. Polychlorinated biethanols are power solvent handling, disposal information, special gloves available youth-based engineering office. Lightning arrestor. Lightning arrestor is a protective device limited to voltage caught with a lightning strike with a bypass with a relay with the current surge to the ground system absorb most of the strike with the energy over voltage condition can be also be caught by the fault of the electrical system. Two general type of the arrestor for the design with the valve type of the explosion type. Valve type has one or more set of the spark gaps with the shear with the connect with the salve spark for over voltage with the interrupt the flow with the current preventing high current low flow. Expulsion type of that has an arc extinguishing chamber with shear with the gaps to interrupt the power frequency current with its flows after the gaps have sparked over the design refinement include using oxide film coated component sealing with the inner components in the chamber filled with the inert gas. Aluminum cells are used in some units. Installed lightning arrestor can retain the lethal electrical charge. Accordingly, lethal lighting arrestors must be considered low and fully circuited with potential unless disconnected with the circuit of the grounded. Or special maintenance tools. Always use the proper tool for the job being done. Avoid using the improvised tools. Proper conditions. Store with the tools not used improperly. Hand tools and the following: screwdriver with a file per inch with the installation strip with the wire cutters. Power handle tools include the following: hydro-pneumatic and electrical with the use of the electrical tool with the battery power to double the insulator with the make sure the tool has line cord with the grounding. Conductor polarized grounding plug. Make sure that the receptacle is used with the store with the properly grounded. Machine tools include the grinding wheel and cutting testing tools. Cutting tools, test equipment. Before you with the test equipment, make sure for the valid calibration certification test equipment that required with the switchgear maintenance usually include with the enemy and all of the following items: multimeter, sometimes with the voltage, and millimeter with the voltmeter, VOM. It is also a single test instrument, the number of the different range of the measuring voltage, current, and resistance. Voltmeter introduced the measure of the voltage and the scale of the volt, microvolts, millivolts, volts, and kilovolts. volt ammeter of the instrument, either the voltmeter or ammeter of the ammeter instrument, either the measure of the resistance consists of the DC millimeter, DC source resistor network ammeter, measurement measure the amount of current in amperes of the measure, show the current with the value of the microamps, milliamps, and kiloamperes, frequency meter of the meter of the measure of the frequency of the alternating current with the out scale of the hertz cycle of the per second, kilohertz cycle of the megahertz cycle of the watt meter instrument of the measuring the electrical power scale of the usually graduated in megawatts or kilowatts. Your mega ohmmeter device, the high range ohmmeter is sometimes referred to the mega with the high driven, the motor driven, the battery with the driving gear generator as the DC source, the meter with the review, the measure of the insulating resistance of the high resistance, the committee with the check with the continuing of grounds and short circuits. Your electric analyzer, the instrument, the measuring of the various parameters, the AC circuit, the voltmeter, ammeter, wattmeter, and power factor meter of the analyzer include the two of the current transformer, the switch necessary for the use and can be used for the testing installation. Certification testing equipment should have the valid calibration certification. Fuses detect circuit breaker overload conditions. Open, there is too much of the current flowing of the fuses. The safety value of the installation of electrical system provide the most economical type of current protection. Application, there are many types of the various character for the Apple I. Always verify that the fuses, whether new replacement, even the proper type of the rating with before installing. Never arbitrarily replace one type of the fuse with another fuse with the same physical size just because of the fuse on the holder. Fuse should have the correct current with the voltage rating and the proper time to delay with the current limiting character for the adequate interrupting rating. Protecting so for the end component of the fuse holder should never be altered with the force and except which do not fit. Construction fuse consists of the two main parts: the fusible link with enclosing housing within body, and the link with the metallic alloy with the metals for 2 seconds of current flow through it, and thereby breaking the circuit with the current heat of the alloys to the melting point. The line breaks and the arc forms. Melting continues rapidly until the resultant gap is too wide for the arc to span. Fine. The fuse usually can carry 100% of the load indefinitely and will blow in on a specified time at 150% overload over the following fuses type are used. Current limiting fuses. Current limiting fuses use the necessary limited amount of the fault energy flowing for the fuse over the circuit of the fuse may clear of the fault less than the 1/2 cycle over the fault. Current same way with the considered with the current limiting fuse of the fault current with allow with the flow with 1/2 cycle with more the maximum peak of the fault current pass through the fuse of the current limiting the must act with the quick limit with the energy light let through the fuse of the protected circuit with the total clearing of the time of the fuse made up of the two components, the melting time, the arcing time. The faulty current with the reach of maximum conclusion of the melting time must be less than 1/4 cycle. Arc is established on the fuse conclusion of the melting time of the arc presented with a high resistant flow. Faulty current decays the zero clearance of the fault whenever the possible de-energy of the fuse hole with the sugar breaker remove the insulating of the fuse. Metal enclosed fuse of the fuse include with the filter metalling housing and used up to 75,100 volts, protecting transformer banks and other distribution elements refer to the manufacturer literature for the details. Glass enclosed fuse. Fuse included with a glass tube filled with the quenching liquid carbon tetrachloride liquid. Frequently you refer to the manufacturer literature for the details. Your expulsion fuse. The fuse included with the fiber and filled with the dry powdered boric acid for the fuse elements below. Boric acid produces the gases which will promptly deionizing the arc used on circuit breaker with up to 138 kilovolt for the manufacturer literature for the details. Check examination. Examine the fuse, the terminal holders, discoloration, calibrate heat with a poor contact corrosion check to perform determine the type of the fuse holder. Proceed as follows. Inspect fuse holder contact with the surface of pitting of the burning alignment of spring with pressure badly pitted burning components that must be replaced. Examine the fuse unit of the renewable element of the fuse type with the corrosion. Show the sign of the discharge tracking the fuse replaced with the components and show the deterioration. Verify that all the attaching parts is insulated tightened to the proper torque value. Check the fuse tubes made with the fiber or other organic material. The refuse fuse type that's required for the manufacturer literature. Check vented explosion fuse. Some of the fuses may have condenser mufflers, restriction, expulsion, gases during operation, dropout features automatically disengage with the fuse that operates may be used with the fuse that usually have seals to keep the moisture out of the interpreting chamber. The refer to manufacturer literature for the instruction. Replace fuse hole with the clips in which are worn and make the poor contact. Remove the oxidization and corrosion of the fuse holder and clips. Determine the cause of the overheating correction of the required synchroscope. The synchroscope is usually installed with a switchgear with a control panel with to determine the phase of the difference of the degree of the synchronism of the two alternating current quantity with the two generator. The synchronism always indicate with the condition of the incoming machine with respect to the bus frequency of the incoming machine. The higher than bus frequency of the synchronizing point revolves in the fast direction of the frequency of the incoming machine. The slower than bus frequency synchronizing scope pointer revolves In a slow direction, the pointer stops to have the position other than 0 degrees indicated with the incoming machine with the same frequency of the bus out phase. Correct with the phase error of the adjusting of the primary mover governor with the incoming of the machine with a higher speed. Synchronoscope of the pointer that should revolve slowly with the fast direct with the machine with the parallel of the point reaches 0 degree position travel in the fast direction. The parallel pointer will stay at 0 degrees. Word of manufacturer letter for specific operation inspection information for individual equipment. Chapter 6, Operating Procedures.